9.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Kiwi.
Well, it was 20 years ago last night, August the 9th, that Royd Kennedy, firefighter out in South Auckland, did something rather extraordinary and saved the life of a young girl under a burning fuel tanker. And his story is just one of the many stories included in a new book called Kiwi Heroes, 50 Courageous New Zealanders by Bronwyn Sell. And Bronwyn joins me in the Kiwi studio this morning. Good morning to you, Bronwyn.
Morning.
Gosh, yes, 20 years ago last night.
Yeah, I didn't realise that.
I was just reading his story last night in this book. At that point, I was going, hang on, August 9th, that's today.
It's today.
I remember that at the time, and I remember thinking, wow, it was really extraordinary. It was well covered by the news media of the time, and he really was put up on the pedestal as a Kiwi hero, but it's not until reading the details of exactly what he did and the situation that he was in and that little girl was in that it really hit home for me last night when I was reading that.
I know, yeah. That's right. It's like a lot of the stories in this book, we know of them, but to actually go back and, I had an excuse to, of course, read all the autobiographies and all the, biographies and newspaper articles, and, yeah, it really hits home, but you cannot go past his brand of heroism.
No.
Yeah, he was called out to a fire at the Manukau shopping centre, and there was a 12-year-old trapped underneath a burning tanker, and she was conscious but obviously terrified, and so he wriggled underneath the tanker to hold her hand, not just confident that he was going to die, and he made that decision to die with her rather than leave her alone.
A completely selfless act.
Yeah.
Is that one of the ways you would define a hero? But because for the purposes of the book, you really needed to narrow it down, didn't you?
Yeah, it was quite a process to define. I mean, you kind of think it's a fairly easy thing, but it did take a bit of refining. His heroism was a heroism of an act of a moment, a decision made in the literally the heat of the moment. But there are there is the heroism of a lifetime's achievements, of the Edmund Hillary or Fred Hollow's brand. But what we settled on for a definition was a hero was someone who took a risk, great risk, for the benefit of others.
Okay, so we're not talking about an All Black just for simply running across the field and taking out a few dudes on the way.
And for plenty of people, that is a hero. For the purposes of this book, we strayed away from that. In fact, it was a bit of a running joke that the only All Blacks who are in the book are there for not playing.
Yeah.
We've got Graham Murray, Ken Gray and Bruce Robertson who refused to play against the Springboks. Especially, in Graham Murray's case, he was the All Black captain. For him to refuse to play in 1981, where most of the rugby community was pro-tour, incredibly brave decision on his part.
Oddly enough, there's a lot of synchronicity going on, but I was at a batch last week, and it was a stormy day. I was playing Trivial Pursuit, and the question came up, who was the All Black captain?
No way.
Refused to play, and it was Graham Murray.
Could you answer it?
I did. That was a locked away piece of knowledge. There are so many stories in this book though that we are quite familiar with. Say the Wahine disaster, and very well known ones that are ingrained in our memory. Do you think, as New Zealanders, because we hear about these so often, we take them for granted? Yeah,
we don't often take the time to actually go back to those source documents and read it all over again, And I mean, I was the same before I embarked on this book, and going back to the memoirs and the histories of Wahine was a fascinating experience. And I think especially with Wahine, we get the impression that there were a lot of heroes on that day, and there were. But can you name any?
True.
And
I go through the book, I can.
Yeah. So I've sort of picked 4 who are representative of all of those hundreds of people who set out in their own private boats to drag people out of those waters. And there are some incredible acts of individual heroism there.
And researching this, though, did you find that there was some politics that went on afterwards? Sort of about, who actually did all the rescuing?
Yeah, it was interesting because there was a commission of inquiry which was accused of just putting it down to an act of nature, and no one was blamed. And no one was officially recognised for their heroism, which is just crazy. Because without the efforts of everyone from the crews of the boats to rescue personnel to just everyday people who set out in their launch, without the efforts of those people, hundreds more would have died.
In your research, have you found that the magnitude of disasters has decreased over time? Are we becoming a safer society?
Well,
and so we don't need these heroes to step up so often?
Well,
because I was thinking about the Tangawai. We've got all these warning systems in place. There's no way that a bridge will be wiped out and a train will fall off.
Well, I mean, you've got to hope so, but and we are lucky that we don't have these massive disasters, but we do have tragedies on a smaller scale. Of course, there was the canyoning disaster a few years back with the students from
Cave Creek
School. No, the
the canyoning. South.
Yeah, which is in the book. Tony McLean, the young teacher there, making the decision to strap himself to a boy who had cerebral palsy, because he knew that it would increase the boy's chances of survival, even though it decreased his own. On his own, he could have jumped into this churning river and made it safely to the other bank because he was a very strong, fit young teacher, but he decided that he wasn't going to leave this kid alone, and they both died in the end. So that's again a different, mark of heroism.
Are there other stories that perhaps haven't been highlighted so much by the media that you've found?
Well, Etty Rout's one of our forgotten heroes. I don't know if you were familiar with her story, but she, in World War One, she decided to mobilise a troop of mature women to go over to the fronts to help out nursing staff, which wasn't a popular move at the time. And she got there and found that the troops were riddled with STDs from the prostitutes they were hanging out with.
Yeah.
Which of course was not something that New Zealand society of that era wanted to hear.
No, the boys are out there. They're fighting. That's all they're doing. Yes.
Exactly. So she embarked on a campaign to try to tidy up the prostitutes' quarter, to give them more wholesome entertainment, to kit them out with condoms, and she became the most hated woman in New Zealand for trying to save all these men. And it's so sad. She ended up committing suicide in the 1930s, I think.
Oh, goodness.
Because she just couldn't return home.
So at what point was she recognised?
Not until latterly, really. Some people did recognise her, and some troops, it was individuals who would say that she is the Florence Nightingale of New Zealand. But yeah, on the whole, she died a very lonely and bitter woman.
You've included Willie Apiata in the top 50 list as well, and of course that was something that was done in Afghanistan, not here on New Zealand soil.
Yeah.
Tell us about that and how that fits in.
Well, you can't really overlook him because he's our only Victoria Cross winner since World War II. And there are a lot of war stories in here from World War II.
Because you've got Upperman there as well.
One.
Yeah.
Yes, Upperman there. And we've also got the other side of the story, the conscientious objectors in World War One who were tortured by their own side up at the front. But yeah, Willie Apiata, it's just such a clear-cut heroism. He, was under fire in an ambush in Afghanistan and put his injured colleague on his shoulders and ran across bullet-strewn desert to get him to safety, and he would have died if he hadn't got there. So, it's just such a clear-cut case of heroism. You can't overlook it. And
it's something that really does need to be described in details on a page, because reconstructions can't really do it any kind of justice.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's of course it's quite hard to, even on a page, to do justice to a story like that. But Paul Little, I think it was his biographer, and he did a fantastic job of recreating that. So I have drawn on the work that Paul Little did in recreating it. And of course, I guess the good thing about that is you're recreating something that happened not that long ago. So the recollections of Apiata and his colleagues would have still been fresh.
Yeah.
So you can get that real level of detail that brings it to life.
Yeah. Well, these that story and a whole lot more are contained within the book called Kiwi Heroes, 50 Courageous New Zealanders. It is out now. Bronwyn Sell is the author, and she's been my guest in the Kiwi studio. Thanks so much for coming on in and telling us all about it.
No worries.
Track now from Killing Bear.